So, all right, Khabib Nurmagomedov, Conor McGregor. Want to address all the feedback from last week's show because I think it was more feedback and a lot of it constructive than we have ever received. We spent a lot of time on UFC 229 and, of course, that post-fight spectacle with Khabib and Conor. So as we were talking about the fight, I suggested that I had heard some rumors that some circumstances backstage for Conor were not ideal. Now, in hindsight, I regret not specifying what I was talking about on the show because it led to some mass speculation as to what I was talking about. Now, first, I'm going to say, and Kenny can certainly attest to this, we hear and see so many little things and details, backstage and otherwise, that this audience would find very interesting. And we would like nothing more than to crack a mic every Monday morning and share all of that with you. But, of course, 90% of the time, that stuff either off the record or it's just not to be discussed, and that just sort of is what it is. For the record, I will say, if you did not see my tweets, in this situation, I didn't hear anything about threats to Conor McGregor nor his family. I didn't hear anything about Conor having staph infection. I didn't hear anything about Conor having to pass a kidney stone. I didn't hear of any ailment that would have adversely affected his training camp or his performance on fight night. All I did hear on good authority was that the locker room was chaotic, a lot of people coming and going, and I guess that doesn't deviate from the norm necessarily. John Kavanaugh was asked on Twitter about there being a disturbance back there. He denied that. Of course, a disturbance was not directly what I was implying. Far more salient than that, and I guess this is what I was ultimately referring to. Conor had his hands wrapped by a cut man who had never wrapped him before for the biggest fight of his life. Instead of Kavanaugh or maybe whichever coach normally wraps Conor McGregor, it was a cut man, and perhaps Conor was a little bit surprised by that reality or how that came to pass. I don't believe it had any impact on the fight. I think if Conor and Khabib fought 10 times, Nurmagomedov would own the bulk of that series. I just want to make one thing clear. On Saturday, October 6th, this was not Conor McGregor's most efficient UFC effort to date. You know, from the time he left his hotel room to the post-fight press conference, inefficiency, it was the word Kavanaugh kept coming back to on Joe Rogan's podcast. That was 2 days after the fight. I think Conor, Kenny, can put himself in a better position to win this fight against Khabib if there is a rematch. But I also think perhaps some of the little things start to add up and can adversely affect the overall.
Without a doubt, and you got to look at what might be the root of the problem. And the root of the problem might be the fact that this guy's got tens of millions of dollars in his bank account.
Yeah.
You're not fighting for the same thing anymore in a lot of ways. And no matter, and this is the kind of plight of every professional UFC fighter who has made it, or professional fighter who has made it, period. How do you make the money and still retain that same kind of hunger and willingness and passion to train for every single fight? How do you get treated like that amateur or that new pro who's coming up in the game? Because when you're the champ and you have all that money, everyone loves to praise you and build you up all the time. But guess what? That's not what you need to do all the time. You don't need to tell the champ how great they are all the time. Sometimes you have to be extremely and brutally honest with that person. And if that person has reached a certain level of celebrity or a certain level of star status, you might not be able to be as blunt as you were in the past, right? You see all these, Hollywood actors and all this stuff, and these people that they keep around them to make them feel good and all this stuff. Right. They've completely changed. And a lot of that is because of the status and because of, what they think they need to do now, that they're successful. And that's the toughest thing about it. So, again, there was another thing Kavanaugh said, that if he were to do a rematch against Khabib, if they did take that rematch against Khabib, that he would do a Rocky III style training environment, which means that he would get out of that gym, he would go, have a lot of people who are going to be brutally honest with him and push him and just got to get away from the distraction. And that is a very difficult thing because you got a lot of people and, to be candid, a lot of leeches around you. I'm not saying that's the case with Conor McGregor, but there are a lot of people that just want to be around you. And guess what? You're not helping for my fight. Get the hell out of here, period.
Yeah, Kavanaugh looking for 3 months in isolation, essentially, and I think that's ambitious given all that Conor McGregor is right now, not to mention the fact that he's a new father. But a lot of rumors floating around there last week, and some of those did get attributed to this show, so I felt the need, at least close to the top of the show, to set the record straight. But let us not keep a good man waiting on hold any longer. The Ray Longo Minute, let's get to it.
I was listening to you guys talk. I just want to chime in a little bit because, I kind of got beat up a little bit with the kind of hating on Conor McGregor. Let me say one thing right away. Love and respect John Kavanaugh. I thought he's an honest, sincere guy. I thought he came across great on Rogan. I listened to it twice. I thought he was fantastic. And believe it or not, after listening to him, I kind of even have a different view on Conor McGregor. I mean, I thought he just came across really, really honest and sincere, and he seems like a great guy. So there's no, I'm just calling balls and strikes the way I saw it.
Right.
What went down, and like it or not, I thought that was it. That was just the way I felt, and that's not changing. Doesn't mean I like or dislike Conor. I think he's a good fighter, but I totally disagree with the way he handled the bus thing and everything else. And
Right.
That's never changing. So I just I listened to what you guys were saying. I think Kenny, you were spot on with all the guys that hang around. Look,
Yeah.
as a coach, that's why I empathize even with Kavanaugh. If you don't think I have those guys that get in Weidman's ear,
Yep.
or it's absolutely awful. It's always an idiot. Sometimes the guy has a lot of money, so you think the guy knows what he's talking
Right.
about, but it's just not a good scene, man. And if you're not grounded as a fighter, you are going to get sucked into all the bullshit that these fucking idiots have to offer, and it's horrible because you got to remember I went through with Sarah, man. Sarah was just probably the most grounded guy I ever knew. I mean, he would diffuse that shit right at the beginning, man.
Right.
You could see the way he conducts himself now. You're not getting over on that guy too easy, you know what I mean? But some guys, they buy into shit that even if you tell them it's a rough go. So
Well,
I empathize with Kavanaugh a lot, and that's the way to do it. You got to clean house. You got to keep that circle small because there's so many fucking idiots out there that will come in and really try to derail everything.
the strongest thing we have is our mentality before a fight, and you get someone whispering in your ear or telling you certain information, it can become like a poison. It really can. You think if you say it enough times, you're going to start to believe it, and you get people, oh, you're unbeatable, you're the best, blah blah. It's like positive energy is great, but when you're telling them and you're skewing their reality the other way, it can
Yeah.
be really dangerous.
Yeah, Kenny, you are so spot on, and I'm telling you, there's not a coach that can't, elaborate on what you're saying, and it definitely it's sad to see sometimes, but like again, we try to keep a really small circle over here, and it helps
Smart.
out. But even with that, there's always guys seeping through the cracks, man. It's crazy. It really is crazy. So yeah, kind of goes back to basics. He does that. He'll have a way better night the next time, guaranteed. Because I know a lot of guys, that I trained that had losses that I'm telling you, nothing to do physically what was going
Yeah.
on, but mentally they're in another spot. And another good guy to listen to is Teddy Atlas because I think he carries on that Gus D'Amato mentality. And yeah, there's times in there when you got to look at yourself and he said something. If you're not the guy, he said the one thing Tyson was good at was spotting who was the guy. And that is really true, man. It's a moment of truth in there. That octagon will eventually reveal who the fuck you are, man. And that's why it's no joke, man. And you got to be squared away.
So if Khabib and Conor fought 10 times, how do you see that 10-fight series playing out?
Man, it's a great question. I don't know. I think looking at the fight, you could see Conor had his moments, but he just, by that time he was too gassed out. So I don't know. I'd say Khabib probably wins 7 out of 10.
All right. Well, I listened back to your whole take on this from a week ago because I wanted to have all the information. I thought you made a lot of good points. I disagree, of course, on many others. I feel like the only way to settle this thing is to have Ally Aquinta fight Conor McGregor.
I mean, look, wouldn't that be great? I mean, look, I'm going to tell you something. That
Let's
fight,
go.
I think, would remind me of Gotti Ward. You know what I mean? I think that's what it could turn out to be.
Yeah.
Good Irish guy against a good Italian guy. I think that and at the end of the day, those guys would probably be friends. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
I think that would be a great fight, man. Look, I mean, even with a rematch, we know why Conor would get the rematch over Al, but it really isn't fair. I mean, Al did take the guy to distance on a day's notice, and he
Right.
had, he didn't prepare for him. He prepared for a 3-round fight. So
Right.
I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah.
Looking back on that, it still was a moral victory for sure. And, Al's not quitting, man. You see him. He's not tapping. You got to put that guy to sleep. That's why Khabib
Yeah.
said he's the real gangster. That guy's not fucking around. You're not going to see that guy tap. He's done it before. He will
Right.
go to sleep, and that's the sign of a true warrior.
I just want to see it. Ally Quinta, Conor McGregor with Longo in the corner. And I think as long as we purge episode 174 of the Anik and Florian podcast, maybe even you and Conor could get on the same page.
Like, you get on the same what?
The same page. As long as we burn last week's episode, I think you guys could get past a lot of things.
Look, even if you
See,
listen
I'm
to
just having
Kavanaugh,
fun.
look, if
Come on.
you listen to Kavanaugh on the Rogan podcast, I get on the same page with him tomorrow. I'm not I don't have that type of animosity. You know what I'm saying? It is a sport, and you're going to do what you have to do. And look, there's all guys that we fought. I mean, we're all great friends. Look at George and Matt. I mean, St. Pierre's a great dude, man. I always love seeing him. Him and Matt have a great relationship. They were going at it, back and forth, but in a different way. It was more tongue-in-cheek and humorous and, facetious and, but they have a great relationship, and that's the way it should be. I mean, so I could give you some negative slants to it, but they didn't get to the extremes where they were insulting each other's religion and the family, and
Well, I love the passion of the fans, but what bothers me is when someone gets mad at someone else for their perspective on a fight. Like, I didn't agree with Ray either, but I'm not mad at Ray, and I'm not insulting the guy because he has a certain perspective. That's his opinion. That's what makes this great, that we can discuss this, and you have your own perspective based on what you saw and what your experience is. That's it. But, people get so crazy about these things, man.
I once took a class, Ray, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I once took a class called Opinion versus Agenda, right? And I think a lot of people come at this, Ken Flo, with an agenda.
Right.
The three of us, this is our opinion, whether you like it or not. In some respect, all three of us are in the opinion-based business, right? There's no agendas here, and if you believe otherwise, then have a nice Monday.
Crazy. And I'll tell you, John, the people that say they won't listen to the podcast, I'd really like to apologize for absolutely nothing. I mean, so this is fun.
That's our commercial right there for the Anik and Florian podcast. Right there is Ray saying that. That's beautiful.
But even when Kyle, let me tell you something. The funniest line he ever said was when Jeremy Stevens said something on that podium, and he just really out of nowhere said, "Who the fuck is this guy?" I mean, this guy is funny. Keep it like that. You know what I mean? There's no animosity anywhere. Trust me.